There she goes.
Episode 153, folks.
153. That's a lot, man. Holy smokes. Yeah. Cheapers.
They said it wouldn't last.
Who are they, by the way?
I don't know.
The hell with them.
Yeah, the heck with them. Hey, folks, this is the Rebel's Edge. We thank you for tuning in. You're joining Pete Najarian, John Najarian, and Jared is handling all the sound effects, dancing bears, and any of the other things, sound effect, that you hear or see going across your screen. You can pretty much either credit or discredit him. We always start off with a 1 minute macro, Pete. And my 1 minute macro is going to be the same thing I told Liz Clayman yesterday when she said, well, what about the debt ceiling, John? Is there going to be a lot of wringing of hands and so forth? And I said, no. I said, if I had a dime for every time somebody bought a put because we were going to default, you'd be a very wealthy person right now. How about you, Pete?
Yeah, they like to kick the can down the road, don't they, John?
Yep.
You know, what I think is interesting, and we haven't talked about this one for a little while anyway, is the dollar. And you go back to March, we hit 105. Then we pulled back to 101. And now here we are about 103. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a fair amount of movement for that particular product. So I think it is something that we have to be conscious of, because we know when we've seen movement out of the dollar and in one direction or another, it certainly does seem to have effects on the market itself. So keep that in mind for today.
Yep. And you do not want to bet against them coming to some sort of a deal, because neither side really cares. They're both just negotiating, folks. Yeah. They both know that ultimately we're not going to default and we're going to pay and just extend the debt limit. So, you know, let's forget about all the other rhetoric. All right. Fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
That's right. Fantastic futures. Today, Pete, mine is going to be corn, because if you looked at the price of cornflakes or any number of items that are full of corn, you'd say, wow, there must be tremendous inflation in corn. Not really. Corn is down 17%. These are corn futures, down 17% year to date and 3% just today. So the graph goes from upper left to lower right like this, Pete. So that inflation, not there. They're going to have to find something else to blame.
I think the one thing, and Terry Duffy, you're going to like this one, but talking to the CME, but I'll tell you, John, when you look at silver, it was just 26. Now it's under 24. That's a pretty big move. You look at gold. In early May, it was 2,055. Now here we are, 1985. I mean, we are really shifting around in a lot of different areas. I think for a lot of folks out there, this gold and silver trade gets pretty daggone interesting off of these huge moves. And I'm talking about massive moves in a very, very short period of time.
Yep, very true. And obviously, as soon as we extend the debt ceiling, Pete, we are likely to see the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and gold all rally. Why? Because they're an alternative to something that basically becomes worth less, not worthless, but worth less because of this massive debt, and that is the dollar. All right, Pete, let's talk about stocks. Target, one of your favorite CEOs, Brian Cornell, he came out with earnings, and the markets were pricing in, combination of the call and the put, the markets were pricing in a 7.5% move. It didn't get anywhere near that, Pete. Now, that's not saying up or down. That's saying just basically the move will be within that 7.5% bracket. And we moved what, Pete, 1.5%?
Yeah, not a lot. It did get that little bit of a jolt, it seemed like early on. And I'm not really sure why that happened, John. I will say this. They are battling a very tough battle right now. When you look at inventories, that's great. You look at the earnings, that was very good. You look at revenue, that was about in line. But the problem that they're facing right now is people are only going there basically for the essentials. They are not going with the discretionary stuff. And that's a bit of a problem for Target, because obviously that does affect margin, and that's something that gets pretty difficult. I'm looking at Walmart, John. How about this? They get about $3 billion in theft a year. Target just reported $500 million so far this year. $700 million in theft last year at Target. These are issues that they're having to deal with and trying to figure out whether or not do they end up closing some stores. What are they going to do? Certain areas, there's a lot that goes into this whole thing. And I think it's just something that we do have to keep track of, because this is becoming a very major issue for many. TJ Maxx as well. When you look at the guidance for TJ's, that looked pretty bad as well today, John.
Yeah, and that's one of my picks, Pete. TJ's would be one of my picks that if you ever look for trade downs, that is the ultimate trade down, really, because you're buying name brand. And unlike Nordstrom Rack, Pete, which specifically makes clothing to sell at an outlet, TJ Maxx is getting equipment, whether it's apparel and shoes and things like that, or whether it's home goods like their home goods stores. TJ Maxx, different animal. They're selling somebody else's stuff and they're paying pennies on the dollar for it and selling it at 50% off or more in most cases. All right, Pete, let's take a look at Keys, Keys, because this one, we're seeing a pretty good surge, 7.5 to 10%, right in that range so far today. And these guys, it's a communications play. It shot up. They make electronic testing equipment and so forth. It shot up mainly because they said third quarter adjusted profit is going to be between $2 and $2.06, and analysts were looking for less than that.
John, their earnings were absolutely outstanding, well over $2. People were expecting something close to 194. A year ago, it was 183. That's all very strong. You look at where they trade in terms of the price versus earnings, the PE, as we like to call it. So when you look at that PE, it's trading in the 17s. That's pretty daggone cheap. This company is doing a lot of things right now. I love the balance sheet. I think they're doing an outstanding job. A nice move to the upside today. We'll see if that continues, John, but it's been as high as 188. It is definitely pulled off of that, but this is a company that I think people should know a little bit more about, because when you look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, some of the gains that they're making, this is one you're going to want to have you in your quiver so that you have a shot at it once in a while when you do get the opportunity on a sell-off.
Correct. And you're not getting that sell-off today.
No.
But you're being rewarded for that belief that Pete just expressed. All right. How about On Holdings, Pete? This is a, I'd say, sporting apparel maker out of Switzerland. And I've seen an awful lot of people wearing the shoes, being out and about with these shoes, in particular the shoes. I haven't seen so much of the clothing, Pete, but big drop yesterday. The stock was up 100% on the year. And on that big drop yesterday, we saw unusual option buying. And guess what they were buying? Puts. So today, the stock goes down again and trades to the downside. So as it is moving to the downside, Pete, I think people that bought puts are being rewarded for that insight and that risk that they took. But remember, whenever you're buying a put or a call, you've defined the amount of risk you're taking.
Right. Absolutely. Well, John, these guys, when you look across at what they were able to do, their earnings were astounding. They're up 78% year over year. So that's amazing. Part of the reason you get a little bit of a sell-off, though, is as great as things are, and you look at some of the guidance is strong, but it's less than expected. People were looking for about 50% growth. They're looking probably closer to 30% growth. That's a bit of an issue that people are facing right now. John, when you look at the valuation, you and I talk about PEs all the time. You look at the valuation here, boy, this thing is somewhere up in the stratosphere. So be cautious, understand what you've got. And as John points out, when you've got those puts, if you were lucky enough to be a part of that, if you were a member of Market Rebellion and the UOA that we've got, you'd be pretty happy today, because this move is giving you a great opportunity, but you have to be disciplined. We talk about it all the time. You got to be disciplined in this one as well.
Yep. Disciplined about taking profits and disciplined about cutting losses. My personal risk parameters are, if the option that I purchase for $1 loses half of that dollar and is down to 50 or 55 cents, I cut it. And likewise, I'm disciplined about taking profits, and so is Pete. All right, let's talk about Kendra Holdings, Pete, because KD is down double digits today. They reported a loss of $3.24. They were supposed to only lose $1. So you can understand why they're down. I don't know if they're down enough, Pete. The revenue guidance was lower. The CEO had some negative things to say. Can you figure out why it's not down more?
No, it should be, John. And I'll tell you what, this was a spinoff of IBM. They've not made money. They're trying to make money, and they're trying pretty hard, and they ain't working. So they need to figure this thing out, because the fact that they're losing money the way they are is absolutely extraordinary. And when they gave you the guidance and you knew it was going to be lower, and it was just one more reason for people to say, you know what, this thing, I'm out. And I'll tell you, they've got to prove it to everybody. They've got to come out at some point in time and show everybody how they are going to make money. You and I talk about it with Uber. You and I talk about it with so many different stocks that are out there that are great companies, except if they don't make money, they don't make money. And if they're not making money, that's what we're about here. We're talking about trading. We're talking about investing. We aren't talking about, hey, do I really like Uber? I love Uber. But as far as a stock, I do not own it for all the right reasons. But this is another one of those where, you know what? No touch.
Yeah. Well, they've got a meeting they're going to be at next week. I looked it up, Pete. They're going to be at the JP Morgan Global TMT Conference, May 23rd. So I think that this is the reason that people aren't selling it down harder, because at these conferences, people try to, put their best foot forward, just like Mr. Musk did yesterday with the Tesla Investor Day down in Austin, and the stock's up today. Well, I think people are maybe giving him a break, the CEO that is, but we'll see whether or not that is deserved next week. Yeah. All right. Pete's going to cover a little sports now. What do you got, Pete?
Well, we're going to cover the sports, but I'll start it out. So, John, what's interesting is this. You know as well as I do, you played linebacker with the Chicago Bears. I played linebacker in the NFL for a number of years, and I played in the World Football League. I was up at CFL. We got a little bit of background. Quarterbacks, what are they known for? They're damn good golfers. These guys, John, they go to practice, they throw the ball around or whatever. No one ever touches them. They're not hurt. They don't have to worry about a damn thing. So they're phenomenal when they get out on the course, and they all can golf. And you see it all the time on these pro-ams and everything else. It's always the quarterbacks. Well, how about this group of quarterbacks from the Buffalo Bills, which, by the way, that is where the Toronto team has their AAA team, John. So they called up the three quarterbacks from the Buffalo Bills. Let me tell you something. Josh Allen, unbelievable. Barkley, by the way, was incredible. The kid hit 5 home runs. But Josh Allen gets up there to the plate just to show these guys a little something about how he can do a lot more than just throw the ball. And he's a big dude, John. I mean, he played out at Wyoming. He's out of California originally. But Josh is a good, solid 6'5", about 245, 250-pound dude. He's out there cranking the ball. He shot 4 home runs. He got it in the second deck twice yesterday. So it is amazing. Now, what other athletes, John, are out there that you and I can think of? I don't know who it is. There are out there. But basketball players, I have found, as big as they might be, they can usually golf pretty well too. So I think it's just guys like you, the linebackers, and some of the other guys whose hands get pretty mangled. You could just take a look at my hands. I'm not a golfer. Can't be a golfer. I'm not a lot of things. And I'm not swinging a baseball bat all that good either, because the shoulders are shot to hell. So what do you think? Who are some of the guys that actually do stand out, though, for you?
Well, Aaron Rodgers, Pete.
Oh, yeah.
And for those Aaron Rodgers lovers, they already know that this guy's damn near a scratch golfer. That's a guy you don't want to be in a money match with unless he's on your side, Pete.
It's another quarterback, too.
Yeah. Quarterbacks, hand-eye coordination, there you go. Mm-hmm. They tend to have that. A lot of hockey players, Pete, are damn good golfers. I haven't seen them so much in a batter's box, but I would believe that most hockey players would be pretty good in a batter's box as well, especially now that they're a lot bigger than they were 20 and 30 years ago, just like you and I knew when we sat down with our friend Bugard, luckily, God rest his soul, a great athlete. But, some of these hockey players, Pete, are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and like you say with Josh Allen, a lot of power. So, but Aaron Rodgers, I'd say, being a damn near scratch golfer, he'd be up near the top of my list for sure.
Yeah, those damn quarterbacks, they get everything, man. They get the cheerleaders, they get this, they get that. I get sick of those guys. All right, John, let's talk a little bit about NIL. So, top 10 athletes in NIL college, because there are high school guys, believe it or not. And I've been digging into this more and more. Had a long conversation and a meeting yesterday with a bunch of guys about NIL. Would you ever have guessed that in the top 10, there are 2 women actually I'm happy for them, by the way. I mean this as a compliment, but I had no idea. So one of them is Livy Dunn, who is, by the way, number 2 in terms of NIL money. She's getting $3.4 million a year for gymnastics at LSU, John. She's unbelievable. It's incredible to see what she's able to do. Angel Reese, another from LSU, by the way, basketball player. She ranks in at number 10 with $1.4 million. But how about this? The top guy, it's almost not even fair. Bronny James. I think we all know whose son he is, going to USC. The guy's got 12.9 million followers. That's helpful for sure in terms of Twitter. And they put them all together. Twitter, Instagram, the whole deal, Facebook, all this kind of stuff. He's going to get $6.8 million, John. I mean, how crazy is that? Then you got Arch Manning. We all know the Manning family. Those guys are great. And by the way, the grandpa said, look, you're not taking that money until you actually get that starting role. And you and I think, talked about that a week ago or so. You got to respect that. That's maybe what LeBron ought to do too. I'm not sure if he will or not, but Arch is getting $2.8 million, John, from the University of Texas. And Caleb Williams from USC. This is a guy who dang near won the Heisman Trophy last year. Was he deserving? He probably is a deserving guy. Will he get it this year? His name's going to be there. Is he going to be the first guy in the draft? Probably. He's making $2.6 million at USC. It's not so bad. And by the way, he only has 277,000 when you combine all of his followers and so forth. So it's interesting, man. This NIL is out of hand. I still say, John, the one issue that I have with the NIL, and then I'll let you take it, is it's not regulated. So some schools have a huge pot of money and they can offer it out. Some schools don't, and they can't offer it out. So I'm not sure that's the greatest way to run this whole thing. I think there should be probably some sort of cap, some sort of something to regulate it so it doesn't turn into Bitcoin, if anybody remembers this whole issue with crypto. What do you think, John? I mean, this NIL, is this money just crazy or what?
Well, it's getting to the kids that deserve it, Pete, more than the college. Yeah. So you and I have always been on that page, I think. Is there going to be some abuse? I'm sure. But I do like the idea that these kids, number one, can transfer, because you and I would have had to sit out a year, or unless you graduated from junior college like I did, you have to sit out a year when you make the transition from one college to another. You don't have to do that anymore. And you can earn money. This Travis Hunter, Pete, he's a cornerback at Jackson State, a freshman last year. He's getting $1.7 million. He's got 1.3 million followers. And that guy, although he's light, he's fast as lightning, Pete, but he's, only about 165, 170 pounds, but ain't nobody on the field running past this guy, Pete.
Right.
And now he followed Dion to Colorado. Go Buffs, or Sco Buffs for my Buffalo fans out there, the Colorado Buffalo. Let's see, Pete. Let me see. Bo Nix, 1.5 million. And, I think a lot of people recognize that name. This Shedeur Sanders, another quarterback, Pete. And that guy's getting what? 1.5 million. And he has 1.4 million followers and so forth.
It helps when your dad is Dion, the head coach.
I was going to say, you think these two guys are doing well because of Dion? And you look at him, Pete, he looks exact. I mean, I know people used to say that about us. God, your mom wasn't even part of the process. You guys all look like your dad. This guy, Shadur Sanders, looks exactly like Dion. I mean, the smile, everything. But to answer your question, Pete, I'm happy for these kids. And I do think there will be some issues, not with these guys in particular, but I mean, some issues with some of this NIL money. But right now, I'm just like everybody else, sort of watching in wonderment.
Yeah, the distribution of the money, there's a lot of different factors in there, and whether or not it's fair at this school to have this much money and this school to have this much money. I mean, I think there are things they should work out, and they should do it quickly before it gets out of hand. So that would be my take. But you know what? To your point, when you're an athlete and everybody in the stadium is wearing your jersey, John, you might deserve a little something out of that, I would think.
Maybe just a little. Yeah. All right, folks, that's going to wind it up for us. Jared, we appreciate you. Pete and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then for Rebels Edge.